Hello everyone, and welcome to the final episode of the Let's Learn Ride the Lightning series. In this episode, we are going to be exploring some aspects as to why this track is so interesting. Number one, it's a purely instrumental track that involves all members of the band and is 8+ minutes in length. The first of a string in which the band would do later on in their career. The others being Orion and To Live Is To Die. This is the first one that sets the tone for those three different instrumentals. So it's kind of an experiment on their part. Aspect number two is that the key members of this composition are no longer with the band. Bassist Cliff Burton, God rest his soul, and ex-guitarist Dave Mustaine, God rest his soul. Now before we get further into the other aspects of this song, let's take a moment to talk about Dave Mustaine's role in this whole thing. Now, Dave Mustaine was highly instrumental, no pun intended, in creating this piece of music. I would say that the modes that are being presented in the Call of Ktulu are highly representative of Dave Mustaine's compositional style. If you compare the Call of Ktulu to Hangar 18, you will see that the progression that occurs in each of these songs is exactly the same, just in different spots. So both Call of Ktulu and Hangar 18 include an ascending chromatic line that gives a very colorful harmonic progression. Now I would say that Cliff's role in the Call of Ktulu is based more in his literary influences than anything else, and bassline inspiration for the general environment and vibe of the song. When you're listening to the Call of Ktulu by Metallica, it feels like a dark, foreboding energy is surrounding your mind, and there are mountains and peaks obscured by clouds in the background. Everything has this tint of black and gray and all sorts of darkness, and there's a figure that you can't quite make out, and the more you make out of it, the more terrified you get. I believe that's the vibe that they were going for, and I think they did a pretty good job, as the guitars don't really progress too far beyond the original idea. It just kind of mutates as it moves along. And Cliff is playing a sea of notes within a larger sea of monotony. I'll get into that a little later. Now, it's definitely no secret that the idea for Call of Ktulu came from the great American writer H.P. Lovecraft, Howard Phillips Lovecraft. And Cliff Burton was definitely a fan of this kind of stuff. That's why I say that Cliff Burton had the literary influence and kind of set the stage for how the song was going to sound. Now, why the K? Is there something I'm missing here? I don't think so. I came up with my top 3 reasons as to why this is the case. Within the story of Call of Ktulu, if you keep thinking about the idea of Cthulhu, which was sort of hidden away in a box and nobody's really supposed to know about it, and if you decide to break your ignorance on the topic, you will find yourself in a world of fear and terror beyond your wildest imaginations. So, in order to stop that, you don't utter his name. You don't utter Cthulhu at all, and he will not show. So by changing the CTH to a K, that might circumvent the situation. Now I think it has more to do with the fact that for some reason in the 1980s and 1990s, now this was in the 80s of course, but it stretched into the 90s, it was cool to spell things wrong, like the word cool, or the word school, or anything you replace a CH or a C sound, right? You'd put a K on there instead. Mortal Kombat, Mortal Kombat 2, Mortal Kombat 3, and so forth. Now, this is a phenomenon that extended way beyond Ride the Lightning, but maybe that was the birth of it, and Cliff Burton actually started that trend. That would be pretty cool, wouldn't it? Now, I believe that the top reason for it being Call of Ktulu with a K instead of Cthulhu is because when you say Cthulhu, it sounds like you have a lisp. And I think Cliff was terrified of being made fun of by James Hetfield for having a lisp. You don't do that. Cthulhu. Just say Cthulhu. You sound ridiculous. Now I'm going to take a moment to set the stage here and read a passage, the first paragraph from The Call of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all of its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it is not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little, but someday the piecing together of dissociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality, and of our frightful position therein, that we should either go mad from the revelation, or flee from the deadly light into the peace and safety of a new dark age. Now that is profound. It kind of reminds me of our present-day dilemma, in which instead of listening to somebody who might have a blinding opposite viewpoint, we'd rather shun them into darkness and pretend as if they don't exist. But in doing so, we also plunge ourselves into darkness. Now this tale is far more terrifying, because it's almost making a case that ignorance could be helpful to people. And perhaps that could be true for certain individuals. For being illuminated too quickly can have absolutely catastrophic and maddening results. I believe we are witnessing a similar phenomena in today's internet era. With no wisdom to guide us through the endless sea of information that has been thrust upon us, a mass formation psychosis and great sociological schism is bound to occur. So come, as we explore the terrifying depths of what we should not know, what we should not wish to know, and in doing so we beckon the call of Cthulhu. Now it might seem contrary, or even oxymoronical, that our first step to enlightenment is going to include darkness. That's right, we are going to plunge into the depths of the unknown sectors of our mind. And maybe we'll find something. Check this out. We go on to repeat, further solidifying our sense of darkness and foreboding moving forward. Now things are not so clear, they're a little bit ominous, so let me take you through what's going on here. So we start off with a D minor triad, arpeggiated as such. Now, let's take a look at our finger positioning for this. You need to have your pinky, your middle, and your pointer being used from the G to the E string. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to play the rest of it, because quickly afterward we are going to a second inversion D minor, and we need our ring finger on the 7th fret of the D string to hit that A. So we're going like this. And you also need your pointer finger barring the B and the E string on the 5th fret, so you can grab that E and then resolve it to the F with the middle finger. So let me do that slow. And you just repeat that. Okay, and that's just a root position to second inversion D minor chord. Moving on to the next chord, we have this. Alright, so that's pretty cool, right? Very, very foreboding. We're not really sure where it's going there. It's hanging in the balance. Now this is a B flat over a D, so it's a first inversion B flat triad. Now we have the 3rd on the bottom, as well as in the open D, the 5th on the B string, and the root on the high E. So the root is actually on the top. That A coming from the D minor and a B flat replacing it creates that B flat triad, that first inversion. Now we quickly change it up and go immediately to a root position, but then we're putting our pinky right on the 9th fret of the G to get that extra dissonance in there. We're now playing a Lydian version of that B flat chord by adding the sharp 4 into the mix. And And that's the exact same note that we had on the 5th fret of the B string over here, acting on the D. You go on to repeat that again. And then we move on to this chord. So that's a C major, so you're just moving the same shape up 2 frets, a C major over a D. Okay, so this is a little bit fancy. This is a subtonic 7th chord on top of the root note D. Alright, you could also call this a 9, 11, oops, and there's a 7 on the top as well, so the flat 7th on the D. But I like to just see it as a C major chord on top of a D, and then resolving to a regular old C, because you're putting that down at the bottom. So going back and forth, that sounds like this. And we repeat the entire thing one more time, and then at the very end we do this. So a little change up there, just make sure you're hitting that E at the right time so we can resolve properly. So following that pause, we hit our first shift in consciousness. Now this is going to be a little jarring, especially when I start explaining these crazy chords. So now we're really starting to get a sense of the unknown here. We have some very dissonant chords happening, the first of which is an A minor with an added 9th. Okay, and that's played at the 7th and 5th fret of the D and G strings. All the rest are open strings. So you start at the open A string, pick up, and then stop at the G string, and then we go like this, back to the A string, and with your middle finger, right? We're giving the most esoteric fuck you on the planet. Okay, you have the open, then your middle finger hits E, E flat. Okay, so the first chord is pretty easy to decipher, but that chord is not as easy to decipher at all. Now, let's take a look at what that would be theoretically if it were on E flat. So we have the E flat as our root. That's our number 1, okay? The next note is the A, which is the flatted 5th. And then we have this C, the natural 6th. But we could see this as a diminished chord right now, but you got that B in there, okay? Now the B is the raised 5th, and we have this high E string, which is a raised 1st. No. It's a flat 9, and it's also not called an E, okay? So this is going to piss off a lot of guitar players because they're going to say like, oh hey man, like that's an E, that's an open E, man. I learned that the first day of 1st grade of guitar. Yeah, well guess what? We're throwing all that out the window. Any conventional thought that could get you through the day early on is going to absolutely smash you in this new realm of consciousness. So we have an F flat as the top note. So the open E string is now an F flat. I'm sorry guys, it's just the way it is. So we're basically dealing with a chord that has all of the altered tones. So this is an E flat. I would say an E flat 13 because it has the natural 6. If you take the natural 6 up the octave, it becomes a 13. So E flat 13 altered because it has all the altered tones. The flat 5th, the sharp 5th, and the flat 9. Now the picking for this doesn't have to be that hard. You can either do all downstrokes, or you could maybe do something like I like to do. I do downstrokes on the way down and upstrokes on the way back up, and then once you're ready to start it over again, down, down, up, 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 down, up, 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 down, down, up, up, up. Or you can just go boring and do alternate picking, but I think you'll be swallowed up by the elder gods that you find on your journey if you do that. They're going to be mad at you if you do that. Now the next section is the Hanger 18 part. This is where I'm fairly certain Dave Mustaine had a heavy hand in writing. It goes like this. Reminds you a lot of Hanger 18, doesn't it? Same notes. So now what is that harmonic progression, you might ask? Well, let's take a look at the shapes, and as we're going I'll explain what fingers to use and whatnot as well. So we have a D minor chord, middle finger on the second, ring finger on the third, pointer on the first, just like that, with the open D on the bottom, okay? Root position D minor chord with an F on the top. Now that F is going to remain the same, and the D on the bottom is also going to remain the same through all of these chord changes. For the next chord, you're going to slide your middle finger over, and you're going to create what's called a B flat over D, just like we did in the introduction. Now right after that, you're going to take your pinky onto the 4th fret of that same string, keeping the other 2 notes the same, and you're creating a D6 chord, okay? Now this is also a B diminished over D, but I would say it's just a D6 because you're continuing that line, well, on top of the key center D. And then we come up to the C, which is a very interesting type of C chord. This is like a C add 9 with a 6 on top over D, alright? Now I'm not going to say that the root note here is D because I don't believe it is. It's going up to a type of C chord just like in the introduction, which is another reason this is just like Hanger 18. Now we're just hitting the 5th fret of the G with our ring, the 3rd fret of the B with our pointer, and the 5th fret of the E with our pinky to get that sound. Very cool sound. Now the thing that really makes this interesting is not what's on the bottom or what's on the top, because that remains static pretty much the entire time except when you change the last chord. But just for the sake of argument here, we're going to say that they all remain static. So the only moving part is on the G string, and it just moves up in chromatic half steps. It's a James Bond theme, except not. It's Hanger 18, right? You have the 5th moving to the flat 6, to the natural 6, to the flat 7. And this is a very common usage of chromaticism, right? Keeping everything around it static while that note moves. You can't lose with that. So we move through that A minor section with the dissonant chord and the Hanger 18 section one time, and then the bass enters with this. Just playing along with those root notes. Okay, just a root to the 5 to the flat 5. When we come into the Hanger 18 section again, it plays something a little more melodic. It almost sounds as if like a horn section is playing it, but it sounds like this. Now what's interesting about this little ascending bass line is that it just does the 1, the 2, and the flat 3rd of the scale. But what's interesting about this is that it creates some very, 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 very dissonant chords in between. So on the first note it's just going together with an A. So that's just a perfect 4th apart. But when we hit the B flat, there's an E on the top. And then when we hit a B, there's an F on the top. So those are parallel tritones moving upward. So it sounds like this. That's pretty crazy, huh? So let me play both of those parts together so you can hear what it sounds like in context. So now that we're finally out of that intro, we can turn our dirty boxes on and we can have a little bit of fun here. So let's start off with a little build up on a D power chord to get into the main riff of the song. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's it for the build up. Then we move into the main riff, which goes like this. It's exactly the same as before, but this time we're palm muting it and with heavy, heavy distortion. Be sure to stay really tight on that right hand. Right? You don't want to miss a single string on that, right? Everything has to be hit with equal intensity, as if you're a human compressor. So the chords are exactly the same, and the picking is exactly the same as well, except you have even less leeway here. Do all downstrokes for this, James Hetfield style. Even though Kirk Hammett is the guy playing this part. Whatever. We continue on with this lead guitar part with the exact same thing as we played before. Same exact chords, but we're palm muting the first 3 notes of each arpeggio and then hitting that last one nice and open. Okay, so just pay attention to the articulation. Mute, 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 whoa, mute, 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 whoa, mute, 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 whoa, mute, 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 what the fuck? Now underneath all of those lead guitar parts we have James Hetfield's rhythm part, which is just a series of power chords played along with the riff. So let's check that out. So nothing too spectacular here. We're just following along with the bass line really, but playing power chords. But we're also adding some notes in between to kind of make it move along a little bit better. So we're starting off with an A power chord, and then in between those A power chords we're going to have the open E string, right, as if you're kind of ping-ponging back and forth, A, E, A, E, A, and then we come up to an E power chord, which is the 5 chord, and then to the E flat power chord, which is the flat 5th. Now, to get back into the riff, we're going to hit the E chord twice, and then real swiftly slide into an F sharp. Alright, but that F sharp is barely even heard, so it's basically as high up as you can get before you gotta come back down. But yeah, it's in the song like that, so play it like that. So that part is underneath the A minor section. This is what's underneath the D minor section. Incredibly simple. All we're doing is palm muting these 4 notes. 2nd fret, 3rd fret, 4th fret, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. And all this is doing is outlining the chord progression from earlier with the D minor chords. You have the 5th on top of the D, which is just the 1 chord. You have the flat 6 on top, then the natural 6, going up to the flat 7th. Alright, and we're just chugging really, really, really tightly on those. Right? You want to dig into those notes as hard as you possibly can, as if you're trying to break the strings, right? Grind into them real hard. As if we're trying to break a clock that controls the entire universe at the same time. Let me just take a quick moment to talk about the structure of this section, and then we'll get moving on. So basically what happens here is both of those guitar parts play together for the first 2 times. Alright, so the power chord and the arpeggio. Right, and moving on into the other part. Now what's interesting is that it actually breaks down into just the power chord section. Alright, so Kirk gets to chug along with James for a little while. So I always thought that that was an interesting way to compose this, is that it actually starts off with a more complicated version of itself and then breaks down into a simpler version. Now all the while, Cliff Burton is playing some very fancy bass parts underneath this that you could just barely make out on the recording. It almost sounds like he's hitting that wah resonator really hard sometimes to give it like a type of sound, right? Like your head is a bubble trapped inside of an oscillator that's receiving some very odd radio transmissions that it probably shouldn't be tuning into, but it is anyway. So now that we're through with that, let's hear what both of those sections sound like together. So we continue our journey of illumination into the Library of Alexandria, which just appeared out of nowhere. And we have to memorize everything from each of the scrolls and books that reside within its walls. So we'll consider this the bridge riff. Now, what makes this very interesting is that you have to play it in the exact articulation, otherwise it won't sound right at all. You can't fake your way through this. But it works its way through an A minor progression very uniquely. And it utilizes the exact same chromatic progression that's being used, you know, through the rest of the song. So that's pretty cool. Here's the riff. So we start off by chugging on the low E string, right? 1 open note and 3 palm mutes. And then we go with an open A, go back to the E string, and then hit a B and a C. So you're hitting the 1, the 2, and the flat third of the A, and going down to the 5th. Now check this out. That's an F. Okay, so that's the flat 6 on the bottom of the A. Alright, so we're sort of inverting that progression that we had before. On the D, the note was on the top, the moving note. In this case, we have it on the bottom, moving E, F, F sharp, and G. Alright, so we get this. We hit both of those at the same time, an F and an A for the flat 6. Then we go. And then we go. We hit the open A string and then right down to the F sharp, which is the natural 6. And then we go the 5th of the G, and then to right back into the beginning of it again. So we're outlining the A minor chord, the flat 6 chord, the natural 6 chord, the flat 7 chord, with a little fill in between to get us back to the start. And it just repeats that 4 times. Beyond that, we bring that riff up a minor third. Alright, so this is a very interesting motion here. And I've actually not recalled many moments where Metallica does this, so let's cherish it while it's here. We're doing a minor third modulation. So we're going from A minor to C minor. And it's basically the same exact motion as before. So we're going at the 3rd fret of the E and the A, like this. Right? And then going to the 4th, 5th, and then to a B flat chord as the flat 7th. So once again, 1 chord, flat 6, natural 6, flat 7. With the same tightness. Now the lead guitar is where things get a little bit interesting. Alright, we start off by basically miming the exact progression underneath the A minor section. So this is for the first part. So we start on the A minor, going to the flat 6, natural 6, flat 7, back to the top. And this is totally consonant. Not really too much else to say about it, just follow the fret numbers properly, and you're going to want to slide into the 7th fret when you get there, right? So you slide into the other position. Moving upward, we now do the same exact thing but at the 12th fret, which is an incredibly strange jump. It's a flat 7th jump all the way up to a G from an A. You could also think of it as being a whole step down, but that doesn't make it any more normal here. It actually makes it more strange because, as I mentioned before, we moved up a minor third from the A minor to the C minor. We didn't move up a flat 7, did we? No, we didn't. So we're actually changing the harmonic value of this section. Alright, so this melody is moving harmonically in a much different way than the other part was. So we're turning this more into a C Dorian mode. So we're starting on the perfect 5th of the C. And then going up, scaling up, 5, natural 6, flat 7, back down. And then when it hits the flat 6 chord, we're actually hitting the perfect 5th above that root note. Alright, so the flat 6 chord is an A flat, well, we're hitting an E flat. So that actually does work very consonantly. And all these notes are fine for this so far. Except when you hit an A flat, how do we account for this A natural up top? Right? Let's play those two notes together. That's what's going on in the song, whether or not you realize it. Right? Because that A flat does hit while you're playing that. Right there. So the A flat and the A natural clash right in the middle of it. It's pretty goddamn insane. We really are stretching what's possible in the universe as we speak. So we keep on moving to the natural 6th chord, which we do the same exact thing. We're a perfect 5th above, and this makes a lot more sense because we're actually on an A natural now, so that A natural makes sense. But then we actually have a B flat, so it's another flat 9 motion as well. Crazy stuff. And then for the B flat chord, well, you're just hitting the 6, the major 7, and the root, which is a beautiful resolution in my opinion. So let's just hear that once all the way through. Goes on to repeat one more time, and then we hit the guitar solo. But before we hit the solo, let's hear both of those parts at the same time. Immediately following that melodic lead line, we get into the guitar solo, which is probably one of my favorite guitar solos of Kirk Hammett's ever. Before we get into any licks, let's just talk about the rhythm that's happening underneath. James Hetfield is just playing the rhythm guitar part that happened earlier in the song, like this. Goes on to repeat it 4 times. And then it also does the D minor section as well. Okay, so just rinse and repeat, go through the whole thing twice, and that's the rhythm guitar. So an A minor key center and a D minor key center to keep in mind. Now let's take a listen to the entire guitar solo, and then we can start breaking it down afterward. Such a good guitar solo. Let's get into the first lick that happens at the beginning. I'm going to break this up into 8 different sections, okay? So we'll call this section 1. Tons of bends and tons of resolutions, slow note resolutions, okay? So longer tones, more melodic, setting it up, okay? Now we're in just an A minor blues position, and we're bending at the 20th fret a whole step, so we're bending into the root note. Triple it, boom, with a pull off into the 17th fret, and then a big minor 3rd resolution. We cap it off by hitting the root note here, and immediately move into section 2, which sounds like this. So the first half of that includes a lot of repetition. So you're just bending the 20th fret of the B string up to the root note, okay, full step bend, and then you're pulling into the 17th fret from the 20th right after. And you can do all downstrokes for this too if it makes it easier to keep the rhythm. But check this out. So that was in slow motion. Now check it at full speed. So you're really just going while the left hand does all the rhythmic work. The left hand is giving you that gallop. So practice it without the picking first to get the rhythmic idea down in the left hand, because that's where all the gallops are coming from. And the right hand is just doing this. That's it. So just keep the right hand as simple as possible, and things like this, especially repetitive stuff, not going to be a problem for you. Now do that a total of 8 times, and then we're ready to move into the next lick, which is a massive A minor pentatonic lick going from top to bottom, all 6 strings. So this is all about when you stop coming down the ladder, and then you come up the ladder a little bit more, and then you keep descending a little further, you come up a little bit more, descend a little further, come up a little bit more. It's like 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So we go like this. We get down to the G string, but only on the 19th fret, and then we come back up, and then we go down another. See how why it's 2.5 strings? It's 2 notes on this string, 2 notes on that string, and 1 note on that string. You come back up, play both the notes, then come back down. Then we do this. Another 2 strings. So, let me do this slow. Back up, down, back up, down, back up, down. And then resolve with a 1 flat 3 1, or in this case, 17th fret, 20th fret, 17th fret. And we don't have a lot of time to stay on that note, so you have to get ready for the next lick immediately. So just as that change in lick happens immediately, so does the change in key. So this next section is actually over the D ascending part, right? So keep that in mind as we're playing this lick. So it's a 16th note rhythm, descending all the way down from the 12th fret of the high E string and eventually reaching the 3rd fret of the low E string. So we're covering a pretty large range here. Now before we even get into how to play it, let's talk about what it is. It's actually outlining a D Lydian mode, which is very odd because this doesn't happen at all throughout the rest of the song. It's pretty clearly in a D minor mode. Now all of a sudden we're in a D major mode? What the hell's going on? And we're sharping the 4th. So all the notes here are D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D. But we're starting it on the E, so we're actually starting it on the 2nd scale degree. So this is a very odd way of transitioning to that D, because you're expecting to hear something in D minor because that's the key. Because of the ambiguity of this ascending line, we don't really have a clear idea of what actually should go on top of that, except for what we heard before. But we have an entirely new canvas at this point, so I guess that's why it works. So getting into how to actually play this part, we're starting at the 12th fret of the high E string, and we're pulling down 2 notes, like that, okay, into the 9th fret, and hitting 1 note on the next string. Now we come up and continue the pattern, but we're only going to be pulling off once. And then on this string we're going to pull off once as well. Just as long as we can get 4 notes in at a time. So you're starting at the highest note and gradually coming down each one as it happens. So we're going like this: pick, 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 pick. Any chance you can do a pull off, you're gonna do it. You see? I'm only picking where I can't do a pull off. Keep that going all the way down, and don't stop until you hit the bottom. And then here you do a hammer on into the note G, which doesn't exist in the Lydian mode. We've actually done a little flip the script here, a flipperoo. We're actually going back into the key of A minor before we even get to the A minor progression, and you're going to see why this is weird in a couple seconds. It's weird enough that we're playing an A minor scale over a D progression, but lo and behold, that's what we're doing. So let's check out the next lick, and like I said just earlier, this is in an A minor scale. So we're going... That's a dear old friend right there. We've heard that so many times through Kill 'Em All, we've heard it a million times in Ride the Lightning, and we finally get the warm embrace of our long lost buddy. So this is great. You're just sliding into the A minor pentatonic from the flat 7. What else is there to say about that? Just look at the tab, it's pretty easy. And then we're going to go like this. We're going to do a fancier version of just bending the G string like this. So instead of just doing that, we're going to tap a higher note on the fretboard, in this case 15, 17, 19, and then release it as it's going. It's as if you're listening to a weeping whale, right? Or a donkey. So I was just talking about a switcheroo, right? A switcheroo that happens right in the middle of the chord progressions. Kirk decides he's going to go to the A minor pentatonic scale, right in the middle of a D progression. Okay? Right after coming off of a D Lydian scale, we're now hitting an A minor scale over the same D progression. Okay? Now with this is actually my favorite part of the solo. He's playing a D minor arpeggio on top of the A progression. So we've reset the progression, we come back to A minor, but now he's just flaunting it. He's putting it right in our face. He's saying, yeah, I know there's an A on the bottom, but I'm going to play a D minor arpeggio on the top instead. And it sounds awesome. It's the best part of the solo in my opinion. The only note that resolves is the note that doesn't resolve, and it happens at the end. That's the only note that's actually in the A minor chord properly, you know what I'm saying? So we're going like this. We're going to sweep up the 10th fret of the G, B, and E. And then we're going to slide up to the 17th fret into the next position of the D minor arpeggio. 17 to 13 pull off into the 15th fret of the B string, okay? So that's just root position D minor. So you're going from first inversion D minor, barred, and then root position. And then you just repeat that. You do it 4 times. And then we do this repetitive pull off to pick, pull up, pick, pull up, pick, pull up, pick, pull up, pull up, pull up. And that is, believe it or not, the resolution at the very end. Even though, in a D minor chord, that wouldn't resolve it one bit. Another thing to note about this arpeggio is that this is really like the heart of the storm that we're in. I just imagine just like bolts of lightning, tornadoes swirling you around, you know, like a bird carrying a worm in its talons. Cthulhu is showing you the nature of reality that you've hidden from your entire life, and everybody thinks you're crazy because you're trying to tell them what it actually is. Everyone thinks you're fucking nuts while this whole storm is going on inside of your mind. Even though, you know, we were just experiencing a terrifying twister, we're now going into something even more terrifying because we're immediately greeted with happiness. This doesn't make any sense. Despair, right into happiness. Incredibly bipolar. So what I mean by that is we're hitting this very high bend, right? And then all of a sudden we're going into this like old school jazz blues lick. that reminds me of something that a blues guy during the 1950s would play. You know, like right in the middle of a VFW hall. To me, that's just hilarious. It just sounds so happy to me, like good times are ahead, right? And we just came out of this, and then all of a sudden we're going. So the reason why that sounds so happy is because we're actually playing it as if it were in a D major. All right, so we're going like this. This is like hot cross buns in D major, right? It's hitting the flat 7, the natural 6, the 5, and the major 3rd. All right, so that's definitively a D major lick. You can see it as being an A minor as well, but it still acts the same over both chords no matter what. It's still going to sound very jovial and happy, you know, no matter what's underneath it, if it's A major or D major. But we're in an A minor progression, so there should be no happiness here, but there is. Just goes to show you that the polarities of nature actually intertwine and work together. Coming out of that, we hit the next section where we're going like this. So all that's happening there is we're spazzing out on the high E string, tremolo picking as fast as you possibly can. Right? You got to do that real hard. We're starting at the 20th fret, we're going 20, 19, 17. Do that twice. Shift down 2 frets. Do that twice. Shift down 1 fret. Do that twice. And then gradually go down the entire neck until you get to the 5th fret of the high E string, in which we are now in an A minor pentatonic arena. So we're going like this. I'll try to do it slow. It sounds really stupid playing it slow, so just play it really fast. So we go now into an A minor pentatonic lick. And we just resolve it down at the root note there. There's really not much to say about that. You're just scaling down just like you did earlier from the top one. Now the last part is really freaking weird because I can't even make it out in the solo at all. The solo is just not equalized in a way that you can hear every single note. It's kind of like, it's obscured like everything else is in this song. So we do this string of pull-offs and open note hits in between. So we're pulling off from 3 to 2 to 0 on the A string, and you're going, and then going to 5, 3, 0. All right, so, and just pick on each change. So when you shift position, pick 1 time. Look at my right hand. Pick, pick. Immediately following that, we're going like this. So we're tapping the 7th fret of the D string, going to the 1st fret, and hammering into the 5th fret. So we're all on 1 string. And you're just going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so up till that point. And that brings us into the final part of the program. We do this other tapping thing with some very interesting notes, by the way. We're going like this. Pretty anticlimactic way to end that, right? But at least the tapping part is cool. So we're hammering at the 13th fret of the B string, and we're hammering from 7 to 10. And we're doing this. Just doing it twice. Now, for the rest of them, we're going to keep our pointer and pinky in the same exact spot, 7th and 10th, and we're going to move up every 2 times, okay? 1 fret at a time. Until you hit the 19th fret of the B string. Then you hit the slide right after that. Now what's happening harmonically here? We're over the D progression, so we're going to relate everything to D. That's a C natural, that's the flat 7. That's the major 3rd, you're coming down a tritone. So this is a dominant 7th idea so far, and that's the 5th of the chord. Alright, so C, F sharp, A, or flat 7, major 3rd, 5th. Okay? The next one hits a C sharp, which would indicate a D major 7. The next one is the root, so that's an actual D major arpeggio, sounds very nice. And then we hit an E flat, which is a flat ninth, alright, so we're getting Phrygian. And then we go to an E, which is a major ninth, and then we're going to an F up top. I'm going to call it an E sharp because this is a sharp 9. It's like Jimi Hendrix if he were born 400 years later. Right? Alright, and then we move up here to F sharp, which makes the most sense actually, because you're actually at the major third. You're just doubling the major third, D major. So going through that, D7, D major 7, D major, flat 9, 9, sharp 9, and then to an F sharp, which is the major third. So all of that makes for a very colorful ascension up those chromatic notes, and it reinforces the idea that chromaticism is the strong point of this composition. Tons of chromaticism all throughout this piece. It's riddled with it. Immediately following the solo, we hit the same riff that we were playing during the solo and earlier in the song. Right? The same progression. It even goes to the D minor part once again. Now, we have to talk about how this is handled. Okay? Now, it's crazy to think. We've already played through the same long form progression 6 times already, in halftime as well, the same drum feel throughout the entire thing. And the band is crazy enough to say, hey, let's play it one more time after the solo, just to really drive the point home. Now here's the difference. Lars changes the drum groove from a halftime to a normal to make it ride a little bit harder, and this changes absolutely everything. The guitar part and the bass part remains exactly the same, but the drums change the groove and make this the absolute perfect way to reintroduce this riff. Okay? We've been hearing this riff all throughout the song. Like I said, it's the 7th time. Now on lucky number 7, we're changing up the groove and making it sound fresh. It makes it sound more interesting now that it's changed. Think about that when composing something, and also think about it when you have Metallica on the brain. When you're trying to figure out, hey, why are these albums so good? Why are these songs so good? It's because they're put together in a way that makes sense. They're put together in a way that's interesting and keeps you on your toes the whole time. Even if you're playing the same riff 7 times throughout, it makes it interesting because we're changing up the groove. Now, after playing the A minor, D minor progression over that new drum groove, we hit this. Just this repetitive section, right? Going A minor to F on the 2nd and 3rd fret. And then we do a modulation into this, which is B minor now, okay? Now each of these goes 4 times, so I'm going to play them 4. The same exact pattern, right? This time we're on the 2nd, 4th, and 5th fret, going to the 3rd on the low E string. Now we're playing the same progression as earlier, but it's half of the progression. So instead of going A, F, F sharp, G, we're just going A to F, B to G, B to G, and 4 times each. So it's the same progression, but halved. Now coming into the next modulation, we go to C minor, so we're doing a half-step modulation. Remember before we did a minor 3rd modulation? Here we're working into it. We're going a whole step modulation to a half-step modulation to create a minor 3rd modulation. But here we're in the key of C minor, doing the exact same pattern. But all we're doing differently is we're playing it 3 times. And then we immediately modulate into D minor. Same thing. D minor to B flat. The 1 to flat 6, play it 3 times, just 3, okay? So the magic numbers to remember are 4 times for the A minor, 4 times for the B minor, 3 times for the C minor, and 3 times for the D minor. It's pretty interesting that they decided to switch up the amount of times. I guess it does get kind of repetitive, and well, a lot of the song is pretty repetitive, so I guess that helps to alleviate that repetition a little bit. When we're finished playing that, we do an even more broken down version of the James Hetfield rhythm guitar part. We're just holding out power chords for the most evil part of the song, right? Our journey's almost over. Halfway through that, the chords continue, okay, with the 1, 5, flat 5, and the old riff comes back in. Okay, so just another way to reinforce the ideas. After that, we just hit this. Stop at the natural 6. So you just hit the first 3 chords of the progression on the D, while this is playing on top. So we yet again bring back the introduction and the main riff, but in a totally different way. The chords are being held out, we have a little more breathing room, and the arpeggios can stand out a little further this time. One last thing I'll say about this, we have a change that happens at the end of the D minor section. Alright, so we're rolling through, just like normal, but on the last time, we do this. We hit an E minor chord, so you just slide the D minor shape up a whole step, creating an E minor, and then hit the low E string on the bottom and hold that out. And we've modulated immediately at that moment. It's a very interesting way to segue out of that and to create even more tension coming out of it. It's the perfect chord that they could have hit, right? Because we've been hearing the same thing over and over and over again, and they hit us with the same type of chord, but a whole step higher. So let's hear what all of that sounds like, starting from the power chords that are held out. This next section consists of 3 different guitar parts, the first of which being a low power chord rhythm guitar that goes through the entire section, the second of which is an orchestra hit inspired single note bomb that occurs, and I'll show you what that is, and the third part is a guitar harmony that starts off as 2 parts and then evolves to 3 parts later on. So let's get into what the low power chord rhythm is playing. Now this I like to think of as a backwards For Whom the Bell Tolls outro. So check this out. The For Whom the Bell Tolls outro goes like this. Right? Basically goes E, F sharp, G. Now the Call of Ktulu section that we're playing right now goes like this. Same 3 chords. Now all we're doing is playing the flat third of the E minor key, going to the second, back to the flat third, then we are going E, which is 1, jumping up to the octave E at the 7th fret, and then back down to the open E for the low one. Then we go, and and stay low for the second one. So real slow, 3 2 2 2 3 1 1 1 3 2 2 2 3 1 1. Now the first guitar part that comes in after that is this high note orchestra hit type of thing, and it sounds like an orchestra hit, but really it's a guitar that's drenched in delay and reverb, so it has a super long tail, but it sounds very dynamic when it actually hits. So here's the part. Do 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 dun do 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 dun. Just going between a B and an E. Do 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 do. So there's not too much to say about that. It's just hitting the 5th and the 1st scale degree. So it's going 5 to 1. Now after that whole thing plays twice, the high part drops out and is replaced by this 2-part guitar harmony. So here's the lower part of this 2-part harmony. Now all this part is outlining is the flat 3rd, going to the 2nd, going to the 1st, back to the 2nd, then we're doing this 2 3 7 1 flat 3 5. Okay, so we're actually outlining the arpeggio at the end. 2 3 5. And then we continue to stack this on top of it. So this is just played a major 3rd above the original melody. So it creates that sort of 3rd sound, parallel 3rds. Now it plays in parallel 3rds until it reaches this part. That's where the low note comes in on the other one, and it plays actually a perfect 5th and then a 4th. So that's kind of interesting that it changes right there. So it's all 3rds, 5 4. So an interesting use of intervals there. The last harmony that comes in stacks on the very last 2 times, and it's starting on the flat 7th scale degree and using a Dorian motion. So we start up at the 15th fret of the B string and we go like this. So adding that 7th up top makes it pretty interesting because it's creating a G major triad going to an F sharp and then eventually to an E minor, or I should say G major, F sharp minor, E minor. Now what's really interesting about this is we end this first phrase with an F sharp and a G, which actually creates a dissonance between itself and the lowest harmony. It actually creates a major 7th, a G and an F sharp, and then a 6th interval, which isn't very dissonant. But when it plays with all 3 parts, it works perfectly together. And then on the second half we do this. That just fills out the E minor triad that the other 2 guitar parts are establishing. So the harmonies for that last one would be the G, the flat 3rd, the B, the 5th, and E, the root. Now closing out this section, we have a change at the very end. So in the low guitar, we're doing this. So we're hitting an F sharp, single note, and then going to a B power chord at the ending. Now that B power chord is going to represent a B minor 7th, or a B minor sound. The first harmony guitar plays this. Same thing, but then we're hitting an F sharp on the A string, which is a 9th fret, and then a D on the 5th fret. So that's the minor third of the B chord. So the second part goes like this. Coming up to the flat third, and then resolving to the root note. So we're actually doubling up on that root. So all in all, we have a B power chord representing the, well, the chord itself, the 5th fret of the A string as the flatted third for the first guitar harmony, and a root note up at the top being held. And this holds out into the next section. It fades in as the next clean guitar part comes in, which is the Reintro, which is in the key of D minor. So if you're relating this to the key of B minor, you're actually getting a flat 5th and a minor 7th on the top by playing a D chord over a B. So that's a really strange way to go into it, but it works perfectly. Now let's hear all of those parts played together. This is going to be fun. So after that long fade out and that long chaotic journey through Ktulu's mouth, we finally wind up in a misty cavern covered in ice. We're getting back to a sense of familiarity. You recognize this? It's the intro. Home Sweet Home? Whoa, what's going on here? There's a slight change. You see that? It's actually simpler. Then we're back. Slight slowdown. Now isn't that a pisser? That slight change really makes me mad, because you go through the entire song thinking you know exactly what's going to happen, and then they pull that on you. Now all that's happening in that change is it's just a straight D minor without the barred 5th fret of the B string, right? Usually it's right with that change, but here it's just like this. And then it immediately goes right back to where it was. Now this is in the, the studio version of the song. If you're playing along with it, this is exactly what happens, and it's kind of freaky that that's the way it is, You think you know something all this time, and then all of a sudden all of your illusions and realities are shattered, and you have to completely relearn something just for a subtle change. Now I could continue this rant for way longer, but I'm going to keep it short and sweet. If you listen to a lot of live versions, James Hetfield plays it that way almost through the entire thing. Actually, I've never heard him play it the way that it is on the studio album live. It's always just like this. He keeps that basic. I don't know why. I guess maybe it's too hard for him. Nah, it can't be too hard for him. That guy's a genius. I don't know what the reasoning is behind this, but it's kind of freaky. It's kind of weird. Now, we're not out of this cavern yet, all right? This icy cavern is going to start raining on you, all right? So basically what that is a false harmonic falling from the sky. So basically all you're doing is hitting the 12th fret and a false harmonic above. Now basically all you have to do, take your right hand, almost as if you're doing a pinch harmonic, hold it an octave above. So you're going to be at the 24th fret, and you hit that. And you hear how it goes up an octave when you hit the sweet spot. Just do that for the 12th fret, the 13th fret, and the 15th fret. 12, 13, 15. With a trill on the 5th and the 6th fret of the high E string. Now you're basically just going from 5, flat 6 to 5, and then trilling in between those notes. Now after we hold out that last D minor chord with that beautiful false harmonic on the top, Lars comes in with a timpani and he rolls it on down just like this. And then we play this final riff to seal off the entire song. Bah! So the only thing to say about this last chord progression is it's going from 1 to flat 7 to 1 to flat 6 to 1 to flat 3 to 1, and then repeating itself until it's over. And that does it for this tutorial of Call of Ktulu. I hope you enjoyed this journey through the unknown and all the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that comes along with it. Please support the channel. Go to www.subscribestar.com/RomanOva music, and you can pledge as little as $1 a month to help me out. Money helps me out, people. You guys make money, I gotta make money too, so please support the channel. You can even leave a tip. I have a PayPal tip jar. You could also show your support by subscribing to the channel, liking the video, commenting on the video, commenting on everybody else's comments, right? That helps me greatly against the YouTube algorithm that wants to see me dead, that's for sure. It's a constant uphill battle with this algorithm. But thanks a lot for coming along for this journey. That's 8 songs. Every single song off of Ride the Lightning can be learned in its entirety if you follow my playlist. I'm going to put the playlist down below in the description too if you want to follow along with everything else. I go through every single song from Fight Fire with Fire to Call of Ktulu. Alright everybody, that's going to be the end. I'll see you on the next series. I'm not sure exactly what it's going to be yet. I might take a little break from these videos because they are very time consuming. And, you know, I just need a break sometimes. But I'll get back to it as soon as possible, alright? Peace.